Well, hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your networking. And now we are going to have a best practice case study on unlocking success in online alternative provision. And I'm delighted to say that Alessandro Capozzi, who is the executive head teacher of Academy21, our sponsor, is going to present this case study to us. Well, welcome very much, Sandro, and over to you.
Thanks, Carol. Can I just check you can hear me okay? Brilliant. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. I know I've got a few slides to go through today with you, and I want to talk to you a little bit about online alternative provision, so unlocking success and addressing the attendance challenge that we face in our schools. I'm from Academy21. We are the largest alternative provision in the United Kingdom. We serve thousands of students right now and have done for quite a few years. And in addition, we serve hundreds of schools as well. So I'm going to take you through why we think online works and what it's doing for the young people in our care. So the first thing to cover is that we share a reality at the moment that I know is being discussed here today around absence and persistent absence in particular. That's really marked. And it's something that we see every single day within our school setup. We speak to scores of schools every day putting children on online provision, and that's because they're facing significant rises in the level of persistent absentees, specifically in secondary schools. You can see that 25.3% figure here for last year is increasing, or was increasing, and presents a really significant challenge, especially also for more vulnerable groups, those who are applicable for free school meals and those young people with additional and special educational needs. It's fairly similar across the country. There are some hotspots, but we know from the data that this is a national challenge. So what we are presented with is something of a shared reality that needs addressing, needs solutions. Some of the reasons behind that, as we know, are around parents in England arguably not seeing attendance as important as it was previously. That has been something when we talk to school leaders, and I myself as a former deputy head in charge of attendance, pastoral and school culture, saw a little bit towards the end of the pandemic, but actually we see more now and we hear more. And in addition to that, some of the things feeding that are around provision of services. We know that, school leaders know that, and that's kind of adding fuel to that attendance challenge. So I want to summarise what the current state of play is and why online is interesting. I think that when you take that step back, we know that attendance is everyone's issue. And I don't just mean everyone in schools, and I don't just mean everybody working with young people, but it's everybody's issue nationally, because this is the generation that is going to foster the prosperity economically for our country, social cohesion for our country going forward, and be the leaders of tomorrow. If we are not having those young people learning, and it may not be in a bricks and mortar school, but if they're not accessing the education that's on offer for them, that's a significant problem for society. We know early intervention matters. We see this with Academy21. We have young people coming to us just before things are turning more sour than they already have been for whatever reason for that young person. When we can get in slightly earlier, it means the speed and the impact is greater, and it stems off some of those problems that cause more expensive placements elsewhere, might cause exclusions and so on and so forth. So the whole model needs to focus on catching things earlier. We genuinely need solutions that have capacity. For those in the audience that are here and will be really familiar with trying to get places in local alternative provisions or even on school site intervention kind of provision, it's very limited in capacity. We need solutions right now that can be turned on quickly to get early intervention and have the space for young people as well. And those solutions need to work in young people's context. They need to be able to work for that young person at that moment in time, for that school as well. It's no good having a single approach kind of grafted across the nation, as it were. So just some kind of learning points on that as we see why online fits into it. So as I turn my attention to online for the remainder of my presentation, online is an innovative solution. It is one of these solutions that I think is rare in that it's definitely already proven, and I'll show some statistics later around that, but it's also something that we see changing the landscape of education. And I'm not just talking about classroom teaching. So there's a new government accreditation scheme for online schools. Ofsted and the Department for Education are now inspecting schools. We are in that process right now as a school in Academy21. We have the first digital exams. Our sister school, King's Lynn High, was the first school to offer GCSEs, IGCSEs online last year, and we had well over 100 students taking all of their GCSEs online where they were unable to access the classroom. And we know from the pandemic that although there were some really challenging experiences, that for many students with additional needs, that actually provided an environment for them, tech-enabled environment that allowed them to thrive. So we know online is already an innovative solution that's changing the way education works, and we know it's recognised not least by Ofsted, but also by local authority frameworks and things like that. So if we've already know that online can move the dial in education terms, I want to talk to you about how we know it can change things for absence, for behaviour, for mental health, and how is it that we at Academy21 know that. I want to start with a story. I want to start with a young person in our school. And you can see this case study on here. Lily is a student who left us last year. She's typical of many students that arrive with us. And you can see from her case study there, we have challenges to concentrate in lessons. We have difficulties communicating with friends and settling into school. What happened to her is not unusual. The prospect of going into school due to health issues, due to anxiety, missing out and then building those learning gaps that are make it even harder to get back into school is a typical journey for many, many young people, thousands of young people. And this is not a child where behaviour was a particular issue. This is a very personal issue to them. But as I said, it's got hallmarks across the country. What happened with Lilia is that it being in and out of hospital and not being able to get that routine meant she needed something different. And what she found in online provision, in this case with Academy21, was somewhere that we worked closely with her family and her school to work out the timetable that would work for her, times of day when she felt most confident, subjects that she wanted to do, fitting with the curriculum she was required to study. And we were able to implement that for her to do some study at home and then eventually some study at school. And through that process of making sure the enrolment works really well, the flexibility, having an equal quality of provision, so fully qualified teachers, fully live learning, which is what we offer at Academy21, she's able to grow in confidence, and it makes more space mentally for other alternatives, for other interventions to come in to support transition back to the next stage of her education. Within a really short time frame, Lilia says that she was keeping up with the workload, she's feeling much less pressured, and you've got a child in a completely different spot then. The reason I share her story is because what Lilia's story tells us is that by thinking outside the box, if you will, by thinking about the solutions that are actually there working right now, not trying to use limited resources elsewhere, you can change the foundation of what you're dealing with a child. You can put them in a different spot mentally and academically so that other things will work as well. And there are many other examples of this. We actually survey our cohorts. We're really lucky. So right now, having so many children on roll, thousands more than other provisions, we get really great size samples for our surveys. You can see there in the hundreds of survey responses from students. 91% of our students talk about having a growth in confidence. They're either significantly or at least more confident with their learning now they're studying with Academy21 as an online provider. And other online providers will have supporting stats as well, I'm sure. Many of them, well over 90%, feel more confident in how to access their resources. So the platform that it's getting delivered on is built in such a way, and the way we do it is to make it quite bespoke so that they can access and navigate the platform really successfully, get to their lessons, interact with the teachers. And when we think about feedback, which is a really important thing in online provision, making sure students' work is seen and fed back on, 90% state that the feedback they get helps them to identify areas of success and areas of improvement. And that's crucial because that loop and that closing of the loop and the assessment for learning online is something that is a challenge online. But when you really think about it deeply and you see survey statistics like this, you know it can be cracked. What do other students tell us? Well, we actually did some work with the Children's Commissioner last year. A report, Attendance is Everyone's Business. When you look through that report there, the quotes about online alternative provision are all from Academy21 students. So UK students doing their learning online. And you can see from that example there about how and why students come to us. And we saw through the evidence that was given to the Children's Commissioner from our students that online was a salvation in many ways. And then finally, what our clients tell us, these are just some quotes from two of our very many clients who sit on our user group, and they talk about confidence, the deep challenge in their school when a child is suffering things like panic attacks or high anxiety, where it's very hard to deal with that in the maelstrom of the school day and the structures and the strictures of a school environment. If you can give them something else, it might be online in hybrid form, which is going very popular now, or sometime at home, and building that back into mainstream. You can see those passions, the energy of those children, and the teachers have the space to actually think about what's needed for them. And we see that similarly in other quotes as well. Again, confidence a key theme. Students here, after a few months, returning to school, and that's really important for us at Academy21. We actually don't want to keep the students with us. We like to keep the clients with us, but what we're looking for is keeping the young people there for as long as they need and not longer. So our partnerships extend further than this. This is just a slide to show you some of the work we do across the country with different county councils. We work very closely with local authorities to provide provision for young people who aren't in school for whatever reason. But the question is, what is it that works about online provision? You can see that it works. You can see all the testimony there. And there are some key points, really. The first thing to say is that so many schools now are doing this and so many students are doing it. There's a track record of it. So there's lots of people you can speak to say, well, how did you get that working in your setting? And the school down the road from you will likely be doing it, or the next school will be using it as well as an upstream solution, as a targeted intervention for longer term. We think about the most common uses of it. So we know from our survey data that return to mainstream here is the most popular reason for using online alternative provision. And when our clients are asked, many of them are strongly agreeing, or at least somewhat agreeing, that it is effectively supporting their students. And this, again, is from a very large survey sample that we did. So the reasons are very different, but what you'd expect is the return to mainstream is something that is desired if it's right for the child, and we fully support that. So as I just come towards the end of my presentation, ready for questions at the end, I wanted to pick out what it is that is making this happen. The first thing is about implementation. It's about how quickly and the capacity online can do it. It won't be for every child, and that's something that we're very clear on. But there are no space constraints in the same way as you get with a physical school. And the timetable flexibility when you're with a provision like Academy21, with the size and scope that it has, means that you can have lessons at any point of the day. We run the same sessions in English, math, science, whatever the subject, at different points in the day. So it can fit with your school's timetable or your child's needs, or the considerations and restraints and constraints on that child's time. They may be a young carer, they may need some time out for medical procedures, or they may be more confident in the afternoon, building up away from early morning anxiety. You can do it for short, medium and long-term needs. It fits with the 3 strands for AP in the new Send AP improvement plan from the government. Upstream early solution or longer term transitional. It doesn't really matter. It's got the capacity, and a child can be learning in 2 days, which is really significant. I think the sweet spot with it really is about the shift in environment. When I speak to young people who use our provision, and having worked and led in schools for many years, in physical bricks and mortar schools, the fact that it's very child focused and swift, and there's this induction program that we run at Academy21, settles them quickly. And that shifting pace and routine allows those young people to feel like this is different. This is something I have more control over. I'm away from the environmental pressures. It may be only for a few weeks, but they're in a better spot for those fantastic school leaders in physical schools to then reconnect with them. And we see everything we do as a partnership. Those physical schools are so often bending over backwards for these young people, trying to think of things that can make it work. We can slot into that for them. And then my final kind of 2 points here is about how connected it is. So the high capacity and the shift in environment is a really good initial basis, but actually it's firmly connected to school. So we have really effective safeguarding procedures within Academy21. DSL, we use My Concern, we follow through on all of the safeguarding concerns we've got, and we make sure the school knows about it, what we've done, and then we're there to pick up where they need to pick up. And that's really important when you think about online learning, is having very good safeguarding procedures. It's the same with attendance monitoring. We have a bespoke platform that allows people to see not just which child was in a lesson, but how long they were there for, how they engaged. The teachers give them a mark for every lesson on 3 factors to do with engagement and interaction. So you really get a very quick snapshot of what's going on with that child's education, as well as the reports. And we focus on transition through the enrolment process, getting them the right program of lessons, the right teachers for them, helping talk with them about how to transition back to school in the mainstream. If that's what's right for that child, we support that as well. And the curriculum is well aligned. These young people are learning the same curriculum as they would in a physical school. and it's purpose-built. So our platforms are all purpose-built. We think about that journey. I remember vividly that when I started school, thinking about where's the canteen, where's my classroom, feeling a bit worried when I might get lost. Here we've thought about it too. It's the same online. Children have the same worries. It's really natural. We make sure it's a single click into the classroom. Everything is coming up with prompts that they might need, reminders of work. It's gentle, but it's supportive, and it helps them build resilience and routines. And it's fully live. I can't stress that enough. A live stream, for example, isn't adequate in our view. You need a teacher who develops relationships, who is adaptive in their teaching, who knows about those children, feeds back to them, speaks to them like I'm speaking to you now, and knows online pedagogies, which are different to physical pedagogies. There's lots of commonality, but they need to be really well trained to have that online presence and connect with young people, and to have those different means of participation, because not every child can speak on a camera or a microphone at all times. There are different needs, and you have to be able to adapt to that. So that's the end of my presentation about online is there. It's used across many settings already. There's a real good track record, and then why it works at the end there. If you want to know any more, there's some contact details on the screen, and we're always really happy to talk to people. Whatever the questions that you've got, whether you have an idea for a project around it, or whether you've got a young person you think it might work for, you just want to know more, we're always happy to extol the virtues of online, but particularly that partnership between physical settings, because these are not different fields. We are complementary. And I think with that kind of mindset, we get to a state where you've got a really good solution here that can open up doors to other solutions later for young people. So that's the end of my presentation, and I can turn over to any questions, Carol.
Thank you very much indeed. That's really fascinating. And we already have a question coming up from Jill, which is great. So is this mainly secondary successful? And how would it look within a primary sector if a child learned online within the school itself in terms of setting support? So secondary versus primary, in school, virtual, as it were, versus at home.
Great questions. I'll take two both separately. So Academy21 deals with Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, mostly secondary. I think it's probably obvious to most people that the older the child, often the more they can cope with an online setup. But it all depends on how it's set up. So we offer there, but our sister school, King's Inns High, offers it a primary from age 7 upwards. Not below that. I think there are more challenges below that age, and there's also different childhood development aspects and milestones that require different kind of consideration. It does work at primary. It often works for children in more extreme circumstances, at that level where they're requiring that kind of support, and they've got support at home or in school. But secondary, it really works well. But we offer both, but we focus our attention at Academy21 on the secondary sector. And actually, the question about format, it can be done both at home with supervision, is what we advise. But we are seeing a far bigger trend towards it being used to power, if you will, the curriculum of AP settings. So we provide lessons into PRUs, into alternative provisions, into on-site alternative provisions within schools or in multi-academy trusts. And that hybrid model is powerful because the child stays connected to the people they already know and the setting, and maybe the break times and the friendship groups where that's a positive thing for them. But at the same time, they've got that distance from maybe some of those lessons and environments and routines that aren't working for them, whether it's they can't face it or whether their behaviour in it is a challenge. And it allows that. And we're seeing that huge growth in hybrid. And it can also, with the flexibility aspect, be turned on and off for those children at different points. So quite quickly at the end of a week, they can be back in physical, or they can be doing a little bit in the library or in the AP setting, and then other lessons in the afternoon somewhere else, or tapping into their PE in school and doing some lessons here with support from an INA, for example. So yeah, it works in all of them. In terms of success, I think the closer a school is to a child doing any form of AP, the better. And it's the same in a physical setting. The closer they understand their children, they're monitoring them, the better. And that's why we spend a lot of time providing the tools for that. So the attendance tracking, the progress tracking, every lesson is produced on the platform, so every teacher can see it recorded. They can see all the slides that the child might have used, their experience. They can see the child's work, the child's feedback. One of the benefits of being tech enabled as we are is all of that is really seamlessly integrated because it's our bread and butter. So that's how I answer that.
What if the child doesn't have a setting?
Yeah, great question. So we also, so if the child's not in the school, let's say there's an exclusion there and they are awaiting placement in another school, or they are under EOTAS for the local authority, they can use us in exactly the same way. What they require is that person responsible for their education, so it might be someone in the local authority, enrolls them, and they have access to all of that portal and everything that that we do from there. And with homeschooling, so where the parent takes that responsibility, it's the same principle. They would go to our sister school, King's Inns High, but they have access to all those tools to help manage that homeschooling experience. But when we think about the attendance drive and the kind of theme of the day here, this is a solution that works in any setting, really, whether it's at home, whether they're with the LA, whether they're in AP, whether they're in school. It just requires that adult who is working with them to use the tools that are provided to help that work.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that whistle-stop tour. Absolutely fascinating.